Hey, what's up YouTube? This is the Mermaid Master coming at you guys from the Teen Time Riders YouTube channel with a deck profile of a deck that I recently took to locals last night. Now, the deck that you see before you is none other than B.E.S. B.E.S is one of probably my most favorite decks that never actually worked. And with the release of both B.E.S Big Core MK2 as well as Grand Fortress Zelos, I've been playing and testing this deck for like the past month and a half or so. And I didn't have all of the cards quite yet for it, and I just threw this together, took this to locals last night, and ended up going X2. So I was actually pretty happy and pleasantly surprised with the performance that I had. The only losses that I had were to a True Draco in round 2 and to Fluffles in round 4. You guys can check out that deck profile from Jason from MetaMats. Really great guy, runs a great company for playmats. And yeah, but the deck performed pretty well, and I learned a lot about the general weaknesses that the deck has in terms of dealing with specific threats. And one of the things is that this deck is very reliant on its field spell. So I learned about the specific cards in my matchups that worked, that didn't, and I hope to be able to use that to sort of create more probability for stuff like in the future. So round 1, going through my rounds, round 1 I ended up playing against True King Dino, and game 1 basically he was able to bear down on my field and eventually beat me. But during game 2 and game 3, I was able to commit enough big ships on board and turn around the duel, and I actually ended up top decking Dark Hole at one point on his ultimate conductor Tyranno, popped that, and then attacked with 4 separate ships to take him from 8,000 to 0. Round 2 I ended up playing against True Draco, and this was one of my first times seeing True Draco piloted very, very effectively, and it was something that, from activating like cards directly from the deck to being able to tribute on your opponent's turn. Game 2, he actually tribute summoned like, a couple of things during my end phase. Like, no matter how many times you activate each of those spell and traps, like the cards work very well together and create a disruption engine that can activate things directly from the deck, tribute on your opponent's turn, and then like continue to activate effects from there on out. And unfortunately for me and for the deck itself, Zelos as a spell card is pretty much the entire strategy. So it wasn't really too beneficial for that. I ended up getting that card popped, and if like killing the Zelos and the boss monster just basically leaves the field wide open. So one of the things that I realized after playing that round was that I needed more protection for Zelos. So there was that. Round 3, I played against Blue Eyes, the Chaos Max variant, and that was tough. Chaos Max as a deck is, I can deal with like the rest of the Blue Eyes stuff pretty easily, but Chaos Max being unable to be targeted or destroyed by card effects was a very, very big issue for me. And it's something that I'm probably going to have to analyze when thinking about this deck because of how big a force it's probably going to play in Lynx once Lynx drop next week. But B.E.S Big Core, like all of the Big Core monsters and all of that kind of stuff, they can get up high. Like B.E.S Big Core MK2 can get up to 3,200, but a 4,000 attack beater with the inability to be targeted or destroyed by your opponent's card effects is a lot. I can showcase to you guys how I actually managed to get through it. There's only one out in this entire deck that can deal with it, but yeah. And then round 4, I ended up playing against Fluffles, and I made the mistake. Like, I didn't know what he was playing at first, and they say like go first, set up your field, and then hope you have enough disruption to get at your opponent. But I went first, top decked 4 ships in a boss rush, and just sat on that first turn, and he just OTK'd me. And then game 2, I ended up going second. He made 2 tigers, and I eventually started steamrolling advantage, got up to 5 ships, and then he scooped. And then game 3, the same sort of scenario as game 1 happened. I went first. Top decked into a slightly better field with Dark Bribe and like Boss Rush and different things like that, but was still not able to put enough damage on board. Things that I would change in the deck though is like I would probably put more monster effect negation. I did have a little bit of focus on Zelos, and you know there are some cards in here that I was playing like just for fun. I ended up trying to play this. I was gonna play Mermails at locals, but I ended up playing the B.E.S deck on a whim, and I'm happy that I did, because it, you know, there's really like a lot of things that, you know, I could change with this, and it's a deck that I've always wanted to play. And you know, hearing I guess like some other people at locals being like, oh my god, like I lost to B.E.S, like I'm never going to live this down, was a little bit funny and interesting as well. So yeah, if you guys have gotten this far, let's get into the deck profile and I'll show you what I played. All right. So to start out, I'm going to go through like all of the ships of the monsters. This is a pure B.E.S build, and I'll explain a little bit how B.E.S work. So B.E.S stands for Bacterian Empire Ship, and the basic idea is that either through normal or special summons, they get counters on them, and these counters get removed every time the ship engages in battle. And the idea is like, it's kind of like you're playing a video game, where every time you destroy a shield generator, the counters go down, and at the end, when the ship battles with 0 counters, its effect will destroy itself. And you ramp that up with Boss Rush and other cards to keep special summoning ships from your deck during your end phase and your opponent's end phase, and just pushing advantage and grinding advantage throughout the game. So yeah, so to start out, probably the best ship in the entire deck is 3 copies of Big Core MK3. Big Core MK3 is a 2700 beater that becomes 3200 under Zelos, and MK3 is probably one of the best, primarily because of that ability. If you have Zelos out, he becomes 3200, nearly untargetable or indestructible by several different effects, and not to mention, if you don't have him out, like he has a Cyber Dragon effect that allows him to be special summoned in defense mode when your opponent controls monsters and you don't. So if you have Boss Rush out on the field and like already, and your normal summon has been restricted, then you can just special summon Big Core MK3 from your hand to the field. And if your opponent doesn't remove your ship from that point, they basically will destroy it, and it's sort of a way to get your Boss Rush combos going. In the graveyard, the ship is also able to shuffle back any B.E.S ships that are already in there. So if you're in the grind game and you're cycling through a ton of your different ships, banish this card and shuffle all the other ships back. And if you have multiple like Boss Rushes on the field, you can keep special summoning your ships. So I actually availed myself of this effect several times. I think like at least 3 or 4 times throughout the course of locals yesterday, and it was very, very helpful. You do run out of ships, and you can run out of them in this deck. So now getting onto the old stuff, the stuff that, you know, I was collecting like way back in the day, and I really enjoy this stuff. But we've got 3 copies of B.E.S covered core. If there are any other B.E.S players or profiles, you'll probably notice that they're running only 2 covered cores. The reason I bumped it up to 3 is because covered core is the 2nd highest attack power monster in the deck. Under Zelos, he goes up to 3000 attack, and with Zelos, and he also has the ability to flip the coin, which is kind of useful or kind of not. Flip the coin every single time you would activate his ability to remove the counter, and sometimes you know, you can get lucky and the counter won't come off. But I think covered core is really good at, you know, it can crash with Blue Eyes, it can get over a Masterpiece that's not boosted by Diagram. That was something unfortunate, was 3250 points puts Masterpiece 50 points higher than the highest attack point monster in this deck. But covered core has a lot of capability and a lot of utilization in terms of just getting that stuff. And even having a 3000 untargetable beater is really good. So I like covered core here at 3. I might bump it down to 2 to test, but I haven't really decided that yet. Next card we have is 1 copy of B.E.S Big Core MK2. I'm looking for more copies of this. I only have 1. Probably I'll run either 2 or 3 when I have them. But B.E.S Big Core MK2 is kind of a slightly worse version of MK3, but you run it because like you need it, and B.E.S need Big Core MK2. It comes at 2900 under Zelos, and also has shares Big Core MK3's special ability that not only when it's normal summon, but when it's special summon, it gets counters. One of the biggest drawbacks to B.E.S was that they have to be normal summoned in order to get counters, and if they're not normal summoned, you can't normal summon most things under Boss Rush. So it was just a hastily and poorly designed archetype from the start. But like the fact that it could compete and that I could go 2-2 with it, just signifies, I guess, how good Zelos as a field spell actually is. So the next card is 3 copies of B.E.S Crystal Core. Now this was probably one of the most clutch cards. It's the lowest probably attack point beater that you want. It becomes a 2600 under Zelos. And Crystal Core's special ability is that it allows you to basically switch an opponent's monster to defense position once per turn. And this is actually the card that I use to defeat Chaos Max, because if you look closely at the effect here, it says you can change one face-up monster. So the Crystal Core does not actually target the Blue Eyes monster, which my opponent was actually pretty salty about that. So, he had to come up several times and take a look at Crystal Core's effect again. But it allows you to change like big 4000 beaters or, other things to defense mode. The one weakness the Crystal Core has is that, it's not really that high of an attack power, but actually using this ability to switch both my opponent's Chaos Max as well as their Galaxy Eyes Dark Matter Dragon to defense mode so that my monsters could beat over them was really, really helpful. So Crystal Core was definitely an MVP in that match, and something that I easily could attribute a good amount of success to, particularly then. So glad to have Crystal Core at 3 in the deck. So the next card I'm running is 2 copies of B.E.S Tetran. And Tetran serves a multifaceted purpose in this deck, primarily because of its ability to serve as both an offensive piece as well as a defensive grinder. When you bring Tetran to the field, he comes in at 2300 under Zelos and turns into a 2800 defense power monster as well if you decide to put him in defense mode. The real reason that I like Tetran, though, is when he comes to the field, he can pop a spell or trap card that your opponent controls, but if he attacks in that turn, since he'll have no more counters on him, he'll attack into the monster, either destroy it or whatever, you can attack in, and then Tetran will destroy itself. And if you have multiple boss rushes on your side of the field, you can easily gain access to Tetran's ability, pop itself, like right in the turn that you summon it, instead of getting a counter, like as it was, and then basically just like special summon 2 more B.E.S monsters and continue the grind game from there. So it's really, really good card. And I'm thinking about bumping the number up to 3 right now, but I only currently have 2. So this is what I had right here, but I'm thinking about running it at 3, and I might replace like the next card for it. So the last card for the B.E.S monsters that I'm running is 2 copies of Big Core. And Big Core is actually in here because of nostalgia purposes. I've picked these up like years ago, and being able to finally run them in a deck is nothing short of pretty amazing. Big Core is the original B.E.S monster, and while his name doesn't say B.E.S Big Core, this was something that was rectified in the OTS pack, so very excited to finally have cards that do not have to mention B.E.S monsters and Big Core on them anymore. But Big Core is basically just the vanilla kind of B.E.S monster in a similar vein. Doesn't have any special effects, but he was the first monster to kind of have that mechanic of not being destroyed by battle. And then on the 3rd turn, that this card battles with that effect, or with, the counters when the 3rd counter leaves, and then he battles for the 4th time, he pops himself and goes. So, he's really good. 2800 beater is also very good. I'm thinking, if I want to make this deck a little bit more competitive, I'm going to take out both of the Big Cores and put in either 1 Tetran and 1 Big Core MK2, or just 2 more full copies of Big Core MK2. It's a really, really good card in general, and I've learned a lot since like in the time that I've been playing at the locals, so it's definitely very good and definitely something that I would consider. But being able to play Big Core awesome, awesome feeling. So I do like the card as well as not only a competitive but casual pick. Next, that's the last of B.E.S. monsters. Next, we're running 3 copies of Planet Pathfinder. As I mentioned, the field spell is very important, and you have 6 ways in this deck to search the card. Planet Pathfinder comes to the field as a normal summon, since you're not usually using your normal summon in this deck, but you tribute the card to add 1 field spell from your deck to your hand, and you're going to grab Zelos 100% of the time. The last card I'm running in this deck is 1 copy of Max C. And Max C, you know, he's self-explanatory. I'm trying to decide whether or not I want to run like anything else besides Max C. But so far, Max C has proved to be pretty useful. So that's it for the monsters. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 18 monsters total in the deck. And now moving on to the spells and traps. To start off our spell lineup, we have the master card itself, 3 copies of B.E.S. Zelos, or Grand Fortress Zelos. This card is insane. This card single-handedly made the B.E.S. deck semi-competitive, even on a casual level. And it's just nearly impossible to explain like how much this card does for the deck. It not only fixes so many, like literally almost all of the problems that B.E.S. as a strategy had with design flaws in the beginning, but it also just, you know, does so much more for the deck and brings the standard of B.E.S. up to something completely competitive. The only complaint that I have is, of course, that Zelos is only 1 card, you know, so it'll become like the, you know, the beacon for your opponent's Twin Twisters and MSTs and whatnot. But like the sheer fact that this card exists, like B.E.S. didn't deserve this kind of a support or attention at all. And the fact that they got both this and MK3 just made me like so happy. I was just like, I really want to build this deck and play it. And you know, that's exactly what I did. But yeah, like, so getting into Zelos' special ability, B.E.S. Zelos' effect, after this card is activated, the first thing you can do is add Boss Rush from your deck to your hand. So as soon as you activate this card, it immediately replaces itself by helping you to reach one of your most valuable combo pieces, a card that previously was not searchable. Then, all B.E.S. monsters you control on your field gain both 500 attack and defense. Then, that's not all. Your opponent cannot target those cards with card effects, and they cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. So you're basically putting out 3,200, like 3,000, like 2,800 untargetable Cosmo-esque beaters, except that instead of having the psychic monsters, every single card in your deck is a ship. And that's just like honestly pretty amazing. Then, you know, to get even further from that, you can, once per turn, you can special summon 1 B.E.S. monster from your hand, and you know, you don't have any ways to search them, but you'll usually have a lot of B.E.S. monsters in your hand, and that once per turn ability is not a hard once per turn, which means that if you, like, technically if you had 3 if you had 3 Grand Fortress Zelos in your hand and 3 B.E.S. monsters in your hand, you could activate Grand Fortress Zelos 3 times and special summon all 3 different B.E.S. monsters, grab 3 boss rushes, and have them all active on the field for your opponent's turn. You know, that's maybe not the most advisable thing to do, but like, it's possible. It definitely is possible under this card. And then, if a B.E.S. monster is normal or special summon from your hand, place a or if a B.E.S. monster is normal or special summoned to your field by any way, not even just from your hand, but by any way from your deck, maybe even from the graveyard or whatever, you can place 1 counter on it. And as you guys know, the counters are really important for B.E.S. monsters. They allow them to do a variety of different things, and just having Zelos as a card is so incredibly, like, oh my goodness, like it's impossible to explain just how good. Like, because of Zelos, people were paying attention to this B.E.S. deck yesterday, and I really just have no words. It's a fantastic card, and I'm so glad that we in the B.E.S. camp have gotten it. You know, I could sit here and talk about Zelos all night, but I'm just going to leave it at that. Very great card, and you know, as I mentioned, like, you know, you got to protect that thing with your life. The next card we have, of course, is 3 Terraforming. Gotta have the 3 Terraforming to search the Zelos. Unfortunately, I noticed the Terraforming is going to be printed as an ulti in one of the new Astral Packs. And that's really, really sad for me, because if Terraforming dies, then all of our ways to search Zelos are, you know, going to become moot. And that's pretty sad. The third card we have is, of course, those 3 copies of Boss Rush. Now, Boss Rush came out at the same time as all of the rest of the stuff, and it was actually really terrible because you cannot normal summon under Boss Rush, but in order to get counters, all of the B.E.S monsters that you have require themselves to be normal summoned. And you know, special summon, like, that's why Zelos is so important and so necessary, is because Zelos will be able to place a counter on a B.E.S monster with its own effect without having that monster have to be normal summoned. So it'll still have a counter and it'll still get that kind of protection. But it's just, it's, you know, Boss Rush and the original B.E.S did not mesh very well, and it was very hard to get them out onto the field. So being able to have, you know, Boss Rush moving in tandem with Zelos is amazing. Like, Zelos is the epitome of like a really good support card that doesn't force you to play a new mechanic for a specific archetype, but that makes the old one good and usable. If you stack multiple of these Boss Rushes together, you can do a lot. You can do a ton of different plays. So it's extremely, extremely useful. And if you have like 3 Boss Rushes and like a ship, a Tetran or whatever dies, Boss Rush sent to the grave, every Boss Rush will trigger, whether during your end phase or your opponent's end phase, and special summon a B.E.S monster from your deck. If you got Zelos out, they gain 500 attack power and go from like the measly current values they are to actual respectable figures. And, you know, just if Boss Rush is left alone, like, you will grind advantage. You will grind advantage like crazy. And, you know, Boss Rush won me several games yesterday. So absolutely a card that you must run at 3 in the deck. Self-explanatory stuff coming up. We have 1 copy of Book of Moon. Flip your opponent's stuff face down. If only some of this B.E.S monsters had piercing in that deck, would be pretty good. 1 copy of Dark Hole. I was missing my Raigeki at the time, but theoretically what's going to happen is that Raigeki is going to come out. This is going to come out with Raigeki, or it's going to be played in tandem with Raigeki, because your monsters are not protected by Dark Hole in the beginning, so Zelos and like other cards can still affect Dark Hole somewhat. Next card is 1 Field Barrier, protect your Zelos. This was not really useful under like some of the other stuff, but was really great at stopping Twin Twisters. They still decided to pop all my Boss Rushes though, so that was also pretty sad, but whatever. And the last spell card is a small tech card. Shoutouts to Jonathan. Is 1 copy of Sebek's Blessing. Believe it or not, I actually resolved this 2 times during the tournament, but when you declare a direct attack, you can activate this card and gain life points equal to the damage that your opponent took. So, you know, activated this 2 times, set this as a Twin Twister bluff in the match that I was playing against 2 True Dracos. He popped this card, saw it, and then was just like, what the F? So, yeah, very, very funny kind of card. This card is definitely coming out. I didn't realize, like, this was just a casual kind of thing, and I didn't realize, you know, I was going to be taking this to locals. So, if I decide to make this deck competitive, this is definitely going to be changed, but it was really fun to play on the day. So that's it for the spells, and now moving on to the trap cards. For traps, 3 Dark Bribe. I really like Dark Bribe. Especially in this deck, as either a 2 of or a 3 of, particularly because you got Twin Twisters, you got MST, you got Torrential Tribute, you got like a lot of things that will mess up your plays, even like Solemn Warning, Solemn Judgment, whatever. It just does so much more for you than Wiretap, even though Wiretap, you know, will give your opponent fewer kinds of things. Dark Bribe just does a lot more for you than those cards do. But yeah, like, very, very good card at just stopping things that your opponent has and making sure that your summons go through. 2 copies of Mirror Force. I did not like this card. A lot of the stuff now just has like blanket protection, and one of the things that I discoveed was if you've got a monster that's indestructible by battle or card effects, B.E.S have an incredibly hard time at getting over and dealing with that. I noticed that the most in my matchup with the Blue Eyes player, like having Chaos Max, as well as with the Fluffle player having multiple indestructible dudes on board, his Saber-Tooth Tigers. So Mirror Force just doesn't do anything against them, and I'd be much better at running like a Storming or a Quaking or something like that. So there's Mirror Force. Then, one copy of Bottomless, pretty self-explanatory. Torrential, pretty self-explanatory. This got popped and negated a lot. It got wiretapped like 2 or 3 times. Then we have one Solemn Warning. This barely came up. I'm thinking about running Solemn Strikes, and like I definitely need a lot more effect negation in this deck, and I need to like bump up the number of strikes. I'm thinking about putting a skill drain in here as well. But yeah, maybe keep Solemn Warning in. I haven't decided yet. Didn't really come up too often. Wished it did a little bit more. And the last card I'm running is Compulse. This was the MVP trap of the day by far. Non-destruction, removal. In game 3, I used this to bounce Ultimate Conductor Tyranno back to his hand, and then just attack with all my ships for game. I used this to bounce the Fluffle player's compulsory, cause him to run in and take 400 life points with me, and then the turn after that he scooped. I used this on the Blue Eyes player to bounce his alternative back directly to attack for game. Like, this card came up just so much, and I was always looking for hands where I had it. And for a card that wasn't played like for a long time, like Compulse just put in work yesterday and couldn't have done it without it. So that is the deck. That is a 40 card deck for the B.E.S. I really enjoyed it, and I hope you guys enjoyed watching this deck profile. I apologize, the length is just really long to explain it, but I'm going to be doing some theory crafting videos and trying to figure out. There were a lot of times that I had multiples of the same level B.E.S monster on the field, so I'm going to do some exploration with an extra deck and see what kind of stuff I can pull out. Like, I just read over Cyber Dragon. I'm thinking about doing, first one's a Cyber Dragon Nova and Cyber Dragon Infinity, possibly making some other rank 8 monsters that would be easily able to like get past things. I'm thinking about like number 23 Lancelot to get past things that are like indestructible. There's a lot of different cards out there. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed playing this deck. And this has been the Mermail Master with the Team Time Riders YouTube channel, and I'm signing out. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.